writers and muse daters. I wanted to come at you today and speak to you a little bit about feedback. This is a topic that we've talked a lot about in this group, and there have been lots and lots of questions about feedback. So this is one of the reasons why I keep coming back to this topic. So many of you have asked me what kind of feedback you should get, where can you get feedback, what is quality feedback, and I appreciate all of your questions on that topic because it's super important. And as I've mentioned before, feedback is a commodity that cannot be undervalued. So you need quality feedback for your writing. And what happens when you don't get quality feedback for your writing? Well, in the worst case scenario, I have seen writers just give up. They drop writing altogether and say, you know, this isn't for me, I'm not going to do it, because they've gotten the wrong feedback. They've gotten feedback that came from an ego place. They've gotten feedback that was personal instead of about the piece. Lots of things can go wrong with feedback, and I think if we opened up a thread on feedback horror stories, everybody would have something to tell about the time that something bad happened. And you know, this happens to so many writers. Why does this happen? Well, because they're getting feedback from the wrong source and they're getting feedback at the wrong time. And feedback is one of those things that people just kind of throw around. They think anybody can give me feedback, that kind of thing, which is odd, because if we put it into a different paradigm, like let's say you want to learn how to play hockey, would you go to your neighbor and say, hey, you know, how do you think my skating skills are? Well, probably not, unless your neighbor was a skater or a former hockey player or something. And yet we think that we can just get feedback from neighbors and friends and parents and grandparents and you know, whoever is going to give us valuable feedback, and that just isn't the case. You know, I'm sure anybody could teach me to skate if I wanted to learn how to skate, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to end up skating well, and it certainly doesn't mean that I'm going to learn how to skate well enough to be a hockey player, right? So they might say, yay, you're standing up on your skates, and that's helpful, I guess, but it's not going to get me where I want to go. So I hope you're following my analogy, that if you're just kind of throwing the feedback question out there, you're not getting the kind of response, the kind of information that you need to really make your writing grow and to move forward. So that can be really damaging. As I said, I'm sure we all have war stories about the time that the person who did these kinds of things, as we were looking at feedback. Hello, I see you watching. Please say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. So glad to see you in here. And if you have any questions about feedback, please do feel free to post those here in the thread. So we're talking about feedback today, and one of the things that I want to talk to you about feedback, and I've mentioned this before, is about the timing of feedback and the quality of feedback. So the way that your brain works, and there's almost no way around this if you're a human being on the planet, this is the way that our brains work. This is what neuroscientific research has shown. This is what I've seen firsthand in the brain imaging lab, in the way that our brains work and the connections that they make, that there are certain times where feedback works better under certain methods. This is just the way that your brain works. It's neuroscience. We can't get away from this. We can't change this. It's the way that we are. It's our physiology. We can't change that about ourselves. And so what I do, based on the work that I've done in the brain imaging lab and studying the brain and studying creativity, is taking that information to put it together to work with writers in a way that the feedback that they get is valuable, based on neuroscience, and therefore the way that your brain works, and is always the right method at the right time. So what does that mean for you? It means that if you're in this group, that you can sign up for a writing salon to find out what that means. What does it mean to get quality feedback? Feedback that feeds your creativity rather than stifles you. We had an in-person salon here in Colorado last evening, and the people who were there were just wowed by the experience and how they felt afterwards, the release, the creative release. And they said, I'm just going to keep on writing. This is great. And that happens when we do salon. That happens every time we do salon. People are inspired into creativity. And it's not magic. It's about neuroscience. It's about addressing your brain's needs, the way that your brain works, right? I mean, think about it. If we tried to run a marathon backwards, we might get into the ministry of silly walks, but we probably wouldn't win the marathon because we're meant to move forward. It's the way that our bodies are. And our brain has ways that it functions as well. And once we learn to optimize those ways in which our brain works, well, magic, ta-da, we suddenly are in a very creative zone. I want to help you to get there. I am hosting another online salon next week. It's on May 9th. We've got 3 slots left, and I hope that you take one of them. I will put a link to the sign-ups in the comments section of this video. If you're interested in optimizing your creativity, getting into the creative zone, and starting to learn how your brain works and what makes it most creative, we'd love to have you join us to get the kind of feedback that really moves your writing forward. I hope to see you there.